Hi, my name's Duncan, and welcome to our series of courses on financial modeling for FP&A professionals. Since we're going to be spending some time together in these FP&A courses, I thought it would be helpful to go over a little bit of my own background so we can get to know each other. I graduated with an undergraduate degree in engineering because I was always interested in mathematics and also design. I worked as a sales engineer for about 5 years, and then I decided to switch over to the finance industry. Shortly after that, I started working in capital markets and specifically in equity research, covering the mining sector. I started in equity research as a research associate and was quickly promoted to a research analyst position after a couple of years. I spent about 10 years working in equity research, and while I was working there, I was obviously building, designing financial models, and then using the models as tools to help me formulate opinions about the companies that I was covering. While I was in equity research, I was obviously publishing research reports on a regular basis that were getting read by the buy side. So institutional portfolio managers were reading those reports to glean insight into what was happening in the mining sector. One of the other things to mention about working and starting in equity research was that I needed to learn skills in accounting and finance specifically. And at the time, there was no Corporate Finance Institute, or CFI, so I decided to pursue my CFA charter, which took me about 3 years when I first started in equity research. One of the things that I absolutely loved about working in research was all of the financial modeling that I was doing. So after about 10 years working in that position, I decided to switch over to teaching and start to instruct people on the best-in-class ways to build financial models. Then for roughly 8 years, I worked for a financial modeling training firm in Canada, training people on financial modeling in person with a focus on the Canadian banks and large financial institutions. So we were trusted with running large training programs for newly minted investment bankers and equity research analysts and associates. But we were also doing financial modeling training across Canada at large organizations and corporations, as well as all the major business schools across the country, in undergraduate programs in commerce, and also various master's programs. And then after teaching financial modeling in person for roughly 8 years, I transitioned over to my current position at CFI, where I run the FMVA program. So in this position, I focus on the design of the FMVA certification and curriculum, and also act as an instructor for a number of courses like this one. So if you look back across my career, you would see that Microsoft Excel and financial models have really been a key part of my career for about 20 years. And that has allowed me to build up an incredible amount of skill and proficiency in this area. And now working at CFI gives me an opportunity to give back. Essentially, I like to teach people all the things that I wish I knew 20 years ago when I started out. So that's a little bit about myself, my background, and my experience. I think you're going to find that we're going to get to know each other a lot better as these courses progress, because we're going to be spending lots of time together in this model that we're looking at right now, going through all the details so that you can learn the best-in-class practices for FP&A financial modeling. So welcome to our course, FP&A Professional Excel Forecast Model Design. This course is actually the first course in a series of 7 courses in total. Each one of these 7 courses will all focus on the same financial model. So doing these courses in order from 1 all the way through to 7 makes a lot of sense. You're probably really excited to get started. So let's jump ahead to the next section and dive into it. So welcome to our series of courses on FP&A financial modeling. Now, people with experience with financial models would know that the most complex financial models in the world would be project finance models, merger and acquisition models, or the models used for capital restructuring. Let's think about some of the challenges with FP&A models. You're constantly dealing with actuals and forecasts. You need to stitch them together, and you need a reliable switching mechanism underneath them to keep track of them. You might typically only set a budget once a year, but often mid-year, under extreme circumstances, you need the ability to change that budget in the model. As time moves forward 1 month at a time, you need a reliable way of putting actuals into a new column in the model and also extending the forecast and updating the forecast each month. The periodicity in these models can also present significant challenges. By this we mean monthly, quarterly, and annual data. You typically design to the most granular forecast. In many cases, this would be monthly, but then you need to aggregate into quarterly results and annual results as well. Now, we've just discussed some of the challenges inside of the engine of the model and some of the switching mechanisms and complexity that it needs, but it also needs a dashboard. It needs to be able to communicate to the executive team. They're not going to want to look through the minutia, but they will want to see rich exhibits and charts that can tell a story really quickly and communicate the points effectively. So we are absolutely delighted to bring all of this rich course content to you for a best-in-class FP&A financial model. We have a whole series of courses and we can't wait to get started. We'll jump in and see you soon. Now, with financial model design, one of the toughest balances to strike properly is getting the right level of detail. You always want your models to be simple, but you need to add complexity where needed. What you're going to find with this FP&A model is we've added complexity only in the places where it's absolutely needed in order to keep the rest of the model and the overall look and feel of everything as simple and fast as possible. Now, one of the things that you're going to find in this model for dealing with actuals and forecasts is that we're using checkboxes, which are a fairly new feature in Microsoft Excel, and we're delighted to bring them to you in this series of courses. Beneath the checkboxes, you're going to find binary switches. May sound like a lot, but they're simply ones and zeros, but we use them because it helps us keep the formulas really simple throughout the model. And finally, what you're looking at here are some of the outputs or graphs that we've put together. There's some pretty advanced graphing techniques used in here, but we're going to walk you through them together every step of the way. Now, one of the other things for you to be aware of is our financial modeling guidelines, which is a 90 to 100 page document that we're bringing up on the screen now. In this document, we go over all of the design principles that we adhere to here at CFI. It's not required reading for the course, but definitely available to you if you're interested in learning more about how we arrived at a design like the one you're seeing here for this FP&A model. One of the other important things for us to mention here is that you're certainly not alone on your FP&A journey. What we find is that FP&A professionals around the world often struggle with similar things. Many of these challenges we've actually mentioned in the discussion here. It's very likely that you've been collaborating with your peers and colleagues within your team, but often bad habits can get passed on from one person to another. You may start a new model by opening up an old model and picking up on some of the bad design that was in that old model. A lot of the time, the issue is that you don't often know what good looks like. Not only do we want to show you here what best-in-class financial models look like, but we also want to open you up to our own community. So you have access to these instructors. You also have access through our community to other FP&A professionals around the world. You'll have the opportunity to network with them and ask questions and really collaborate on the best-in-class FP&A model designs and FP&A practices. I hope what you've taken away from these discussions is that FP&A models can be quite complex. We've done a lot of hard work for you and distilled it down into what we think is a best-in-class FP&A model. We're absolutely delighted to share it with you, and we're delighted to work through these courses with you and teach you how to do everything that we've built in this model. So you're probably really excited to get started, as are we. Let's jump into the next video, roll up our sleeves, and jump in. We'll see you there. So one of the first things that we want to discuss before we really dive into things here is how we really believe in using the keyboard. It is by far the fastest and the most accurate way to operate a computer. So here's the way you want to think about the keyboard. As dorky as it may sound, you and your computer are a team. Your brain's fast, and the computer's brain, i.e. its processor, is also very fast. Where's the bottleneck? The bottleneck is where you're interacting with the machine. If you're using the mouse for that interaction to give the computer commands, you're simply spending more time than you need to be interacting with the device. The keyboard is simply a faster and a more accurate way of putting your commands into the computer. So by alleviating this bottleneck, you can save yourselves up to an hour a day of lost productivity. So one of the things that you're going to see us do here is we're going to exclusively use keyboard shortcuts. We may only reach for the mouse a couple of times when it's absolutely necessary, and we want to be teaching you those shortcuts as we're going through the course. Now keep in mind that we use a PC here because PCs generally respond to keyboard shortcuts much better than Mac or Apple computers. So through the course, we're going to be talking about the PC shortcuts. If you're using a Mac, they will be quite similar. Like for instance, Control on a PC would convert over to Command on a Mac, etc. So as we start doing a tour of the model now, let's look at some keyboard shortcuts. For instance, you may wonder where our Excel ribbon is. Well, we've hidden it by hitting Control-Shift-F1 like this. So Control-Shift-F1 can toggle the ribbon on and off, give you a lot more real estate up on your screen. So let's draw attention now down to the bottom left corner of the Excel interface, right down here. You can see we're on the cover page. Now we don't want to use the mouse to click over to the model tab and back. We can do this with the keyboard. We're going to hold down the Control key and use page up, page down to toggle back and forth between the various tabs in the model, just like this. Now this is a great shortcut to use and we really encourage you to use it, but be very careful. You do not want to hit the Shift key as well while you're using Control page up, page down. Let's see what happens. If we hold down Control Shift page up, page down, and then start moving across, we're actually highlighting multiple sheets or multiple tabs in the worksheet. This is very dangerous because now if we do anything to this worksheet, it will happen to all 4 of those worksheets that we have highlighted. So we want to move back across only with the Control key now to ungroup those or unselect them. So definitely make use of that Control page up, page down shortcut. It's a great shortcut to maneuver really quickly and navigate from one tab to another, but always watch out for that Shift key. There are certain times when you might want to group tabs together, but usually you don't want this to happen. So don't put your finger on the Shift key when you're using that shortcut. So here's a great way to switch over from the mouse to the keyboard. What you want to do is first of all, take the mouse and push it towards the back of your desk. If you keep it near your computer, you're going to keep using it because it's a habit and you keep reaching for it. If you're using a trackpad, like on a laptop, cover the trackpad up with a piece of paper. Again, like a physical barrier to prevent you from always going to it. So then what you want to do is force yourself to use the keyboard. It will feel slow, uncoordinated, and awkward. This is normal. You're used to using the mouse. You're not used to using the keyboard. You want to persevere with it. Get through a few days, and even into the second week is when you're going to start to notice that you're actually getting gains and starting to prefer the keyboard over the mouse. In fact, here's a great idea. Work through these entire collection of FP&A courses only using the keyboard. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be communicating keyboard shortcuts to you. So it's a great opportunity to practice and learn the keyboard while you're learning some FP&A modeling techniques. So what we want to do really quickly in this video is discuss model design. This is something that gets often overlooked in financial modeling courses. And actually, during the model build process, it often gets overlooked as well or deprioritized. So one thing that we've found over the years is that often what people do during model build is they either deprioritize the design or don't think about the design at all. When really, if they spend time on the design up front, they can save so much time back on the build because the build goes so much quicker after you have a thorough design in place. It's also important to think about model design in the context of a financial modeling course like this one. Right now in front of us, we have a model which has been completely designed by the team at CFI. Now on your template version of this model, there are going to be pieces that you're going to need to build. You could go all the way through the course and build in those pieces and not even understand or think about the model design at any point during that process. So the key here is really to bring your attention to the model design, if only for a couple of minutes. In this way, you can understand exactly how we've designed it and how we went about building it in the first place. Now, when people think about model design, they often intuitively think it must be done in a chronological or linear fashion, essentially starting with inputs and working all the way through to the outputs. So let's take a look at how this might work then. We're here on the cover page, but to move over to the model tab, we could use Control page down to move to the right like this. And we can look here at some of the inputs, which could be a great starting point. For many people, this seems like a logical place to start with model design. We can start by thinking about the inputs. Like we could start inputting the amount for client contracts, or we could look at the schedule for client contracts that's either occurred in the past or out here likely to occur into the future. Then what we could do, once we had all the necessary inputs into the model, is we could think about down here all the calculations that needed to be performed on those inputs, which could continue all the way down this worksheet for some distance. Finally, we could continue to aggregate the numbers and do more calculations over here on the totals sheet or the totals tab, and we could also go all the way across to the graphs page where we would see the model outputs. So it seems really logical and intuitive to design from inputs all the way through to outputs, and it certainly follows the natural flow of the model. But what we do here at CFI and what we always recommend for others is designing exactly in the reverse order and always starting with the outputs, thinking about the outputs first and then backward solving for the inputs that are needed. We want to remember always that financial models are decision-making tools, and we want to think about what important decisions are we trying to get this model to help us solve for. So that process can often start with questions. So let's highlight the left-hand side of this dashboard here with the shift key and the arrow. The important questions we have here are, how would the forecast in 2025 compare to the actuals in 2024? Or in 2025, how are we tracking against the original budget that we had set? And this is all with regards to revenue. Now let's look over at the right-hand side for the dashboard here, at the ending cash balance. We'd have some similar questions. For example, again, we need to know, how does 2025 compare to 2024? But we have some additional requirements here. For example, we have here the line of credit limit, and we need to know if we are within that limit or not. So this is always where you want the design process to start, with the outputs. You want to ask important questions of the model and effectively design a dashboard that you will want as a finished product. So once the dashboard is completely decided on and locked down, you begin back solving. What schedules or calculations will we need in order to support this dashboard? And then further, which inputs are going to be needed in order to drive those schedules that are needed for the dashboard? So effectively, you back solve from outputs all the way through backwards to the inputs. So this was essentially a very quick crash course on financial model design. You can find much more information about it in our financial modeling guidelines, which we've mentioned in the previous videos. For now, let's jump ahead to the next video and dive in, get started. Now, one of the things for us to mention that all of these FP&A courses are built on the same underlying financial model. And this underlying financial model is provided to you with all of the necessary inputs already present in the model. But you may be wondering, well, what is the best way actually to get inputs and put data into a financial model? And actually, there's a lot of different types of methods to import financial data into a model. Well, one of the most common methods is to do a simple copy and paste of information from one Excel file over to another. But often when you look at that information, you're wondering, where did it come from? Or the other problem is that it often lacks the necessary documentation that should be in place. So you may or may not have heard of Power Query, or you may be wondering exactly what it is. If we were to open up the Excel ribbon up here and into the data section of the ribbon, on the left-hand side, we can see Get Data. If we go down, we can see Launch Power Query Editor. So this would obviously launch Power Query Editor, but without launching it, let's just discuss really quickly what it is and what it does. So Power Query allows you to attach to virtually any type of data source that you can imagine. And one such data source would be other Excel files. So it can establish a reliable connection to those Excel files and then help you quickly automate the transfer of data from those Excel files into this financial model. Power Query also goes way beyond a simple copy-paste. Once we bring the data into Power Query, we're able to transform it in a series of steps, and we have all the right documentation for each one of those steps that it sequences through in order to get the data from one form into the other form which you need for your financial model. Now, if you haven't heard of Power Query before this video, that's okay. A lot of people haven't. It's been buried in Excel for some time, but a lot of people just don't leverage it. But it's a much more modern way of managing the transfer of data from one source over to another. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably have access already to our course on Power Query Fundamentals, which we're bringing up on the screen right now. If you're intrigued by it, definitely check out that course and explore a little bit and see if there's something in there that might just help you automate your workflow and make you more efficient. So the other thing to mention here is that obviously in these FP&A courses, one of the other things that we're going to show you how to do is these nice dashboards. If you end up exploring our course on Power Query Fundamentals, you may find that it's an interesting segue over to Power Pivot, which also exists inside of Microsoft Excel. That'll start to get you more exposed to the Microsoft stack, and Power Query and Power Pivot are essentially the two engines that make up Power BI. Now, these courses on Power Query and Power Pivot are a couple of the courses that make up our beta certification, which we're bringing up on the screen right now. If you're interested in learning more about business intelligence and producing dashboards which go way beyond what we're showing you here, definitely check out that beta certification where we go through a lot of courses on Power BI and also Tableau. Now, hopefully you didn't get too distracted with the discussion on Power Query, Power Pivot, Power BI, and Tableau, and all a part of our beta certification, because we've got so much important and interesting stuff to do in these courses on FP&A modeling. We'll see you soon.
Continue learning. Join CFI today.